Morning. Big changes to UK driving regulations. Oh yeah, catchy inside.
RevelatorAlf.
Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. I hope you're all well in these testing times. So this video, it's all about the highway code here in the UK. Basically, this is the rules of the road that us riders or drivers have to abide by. Now, there are some big changes coming, and you kind of question the motives behind it. So there's quite a few changes coming to the highway code, but essentially here in the UK, it's the same rule all over the country. I know in different countries you might go from state to state, you have different driving regulations, but here it's just one rule, as it were, over the whole country. And it's the same rule for motorcycles and cars, or driving any vehicle for the most part. However, motorcycles do have certain exemptions from certain road rules. Anyway, I'm not going to discuss those differences, but there are changes coming. So one of the big changes right now is that there's always been an assumption, there's always been a rule of thumb, as they say. So if you're driving along or riding along, especially in a built-up area, and you see lampposts, big lampposts on the side of the road, then the speed limit is 30 miles an hour. If you can't see any other speed limit sign, a circular disc. The problem with these circular disc signs, they're usually a big one when it's a start of a speed change, and then they have much smaller discs to remind you, and they're called repeater discs. Well, sometimes they're hard to see as well. The other problem is that actually, if you go into an urban area and it should be 30 miles an hour, in the last few years, a lot of local authorities on certain stretches of road have reduced that to 20 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour. In fact, in some new build areas, new housing developments, you get the building developer who actually purchases their own speed restrictions, and they might put it down to 10 miles an hour. It's not legally binding, but it's just something that they do. You might even get private homeowners or a group of people in the street, let's say, I don't know, neighborhood watch, and they might buy their own discs, their circular discs, speed restriction discs. So us as drivers and riders, you see these things and you think, okay, well, that's a speed limit, and where it may not be. So the highway code is changing, and it's basically saying that even if you see a lamppost along the road that you're riding in an urban area especially, but not necessarily always in an urban area, and you don't see a road sign or speed limit sign on that particular road, there's no guarantee that it's going to be limited to 30 miles an hour. So what does this mean? It means that you have to go by what the speed limit disc tells you. Now that could be 30, 40 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, whether that's a legitimate disc or not, which is a bit odd in my opinion. But there you go. I think they need to clamp down on the speed restriction discs, as it were, the ones that tell you it's 20 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour, whatever. And you've got to make that perfectly clear. I think they need to invest in bigger speed restriction signs, because sometimes they are hard to see as well, and possibly a lot more of them, because you can go on long stretches of urban road or even country road, let's say, and you don't know what speed it is. You have no idea, because basically it keeps on changes all the time, so you have no idea. Sometimes those speed restriction signs are hidden by overgrown hedges, or actually they've been damaged, or they've been turned the other way as well. So, you know, and also sometimes they're misplaced. You're going around a left-hand bend and it's tucked away, you know, on the inside of the bend, when actually it should be on the outside of the bend as you're riding it. So really there should be one either side, so it's easy to see. Anyway, I digress. So that's something that is definitely changing. The assumption that if you're driving along in urban areas especially and you see lampposts, it's going to be a 30 mile an hour zone. It isn't. That isn't the case anymore. They're also making lots of changes to road signs and designs of road signs and motorway road signs as well. I mean, the government and the highways agency, let's say, or the people who design the roads and make the legislation for this, have come under a lot of criticism over the last couple of years for these smart motorways. And basically what they've done, there's an emergency lane, or the hard shoulder as we call it. A lot of that has been cut down or stopped, and they've made that into a driving lane. The problem is, let's say when traffic backs up, or there's an accident or something like that, well then all 3 or all 4 lanes become blocked up, and there's nowhere for the emergency vehicles to travel along as well. Also, if you break down or there's an accident, there's nowhere for you to go as well. So it's, you know, they say there's periodic emergency areas for you to quickly pull into, but what about if you break down in between those? You're still having to walk or operate on a live carriageway, which isn't great. So the highways people, the government, have come under a lot of criticism, not only for these new rule changes, but also for what they've been doing the last couple of years. But the biggest change possibly to the highway code, this is to the rules of the road, is that now they're going to be putting extra emphasis or extra onus on road users of motorized vehicles, motorcycles, cars, lorries, trucks, whatever. And it's extra onus on them for the safety of all road users, or more vulnerable road users. So in other words, cyclists and pedestrians. So what this means is that, let's just say somebody is walking along a path and they suddenly, without looking, come across the road, then we've got to be extra responsible or extra safety conscious for them as well. Now you could say, well, yes, we should always be doing that as well. And also, let's say if we're turning into a junction and then somebody is walking along or cycling along, and you know, they could just walk across the road, so you have to be extra aware of that. Now you're always supposed to be aware of that anyway, and I suppose in the last few years, with more and more people getting smartphones, let's say, or iPods, no, who has an iPod, but smartphones, listen to their music with earphones or AirPods or that kind of thing, how many times have people just walking along and they just walk across the road without even looking? So I suppose us as drivers and riders, we kind of got used to that now anyway, so we're probably being even more vigilant. But the legislation is changing to actually really put the onus on us, and also to give extra wide berth for cyclists as well. Cyclists have come under a lot of criticism from other road users, especially in the last sort of 18 months during the pandemic, because more and more cyclists have got to the road, more and more people are out walking, let's say, and they're just not paying attention. So they're making it more difficult for us as road users, motorized road users, to watch out for them and have safety conscious, or be safety conscious for them as well. You know, you're getting cyclists 2 or 3 abreast on country roads as well, making it really difficult for drivers and riders to not only get around them, but also get around them safely, not only in the motorist personal safety, but also for their safety as well. So there's a lot of onus on motorized road users, but I'm asking, well, where's the onus on the pedestrians and also the cyclists as well? It seems as if they put it all onto motorcyclists and drivers and not onto them, which is a bit of a shame in my opinion. Now the reasoning for this is, for the pandemic, they've basically said that since the pandemic started, more and more people have been getting out and about, you know, doing exercise, walking and cycling. In fact, cycling has seen a sudden spike of over 50%, 60% take up over the country, which is great, but that doesn't mean they're competent cyclists or competent cyclists on the road either. So that's something that we now have to be aware of. So massive changes now to the responsibility of drivers. Now you could say that if you're a responsible driver, that you'll all rider, that you'll always be aware of that, but it's almost like it's skewed way too much onto the motorized road users side. and less onto the pedestrians and the cyclists. The cyclists have got also a bad reputation as well. Well, I'm generalising here, that they don't always stick to the rules of the road either. You know, they'll go through red lights on traffic lights, they'll jump onto paths, jump onto the road, then they'll be riding on the road when there's a designated cycle path right next to them as well. You would think, well, why are we being penalised and not? There's another aspect to this as well, and this is about road insurance and road tax. As a motorized road user, we have to pay road tax and also have insurance, whereas cyclists don't, and also you could say pedestrians don't either. You might think, well, that's a ridiculous thing to say, but actually if you're using the road, then the privilege to use the road should be equal for all. Yes, you can have different levels, but you should be equal for all. Now, I'm not saying that we should start making cyclists and pedestrians have road tax or insurance, but what I'm saying is that you can't take the responsibility away from them, you know, and dump it all on motorised road users. You've got to have something back as well. There's got to be much more of a publicity campaign, a government campaign, to educate pedestrians and cyclists on proper use of the road, or how to cross roads properly. Because I tell you what, it's getting more and more and more. You could always argue about the driving standards or the riding standards, and yes, there's a lot to improve there's no doubt, but there's also a tremendous amount of work that can be done with pedestrians and with cyclists as well. You know, cyclists are seen as the untouchables and pedestrians are seen as the untouchables. No blame could ever come their way, but unfortunately there's a lot of blame, and this change in the highway code is going to make it really difficult for you as a road user, whether you're a car driver, lorry driver, motorcyclist, to navigate the streets if somebody just suddenly walks out in front of you or rides their bike right across you. Anyway, I thought I'd bring that to you, so just in case you're thinking everything is exactly the same, no, things are changing, and it might not make any difference to the way you drive or you ride. You're still going to be as conscious as you ever were, but just bear in mind that you've got to be extra vigilant by law now, so it seems. But these changes are coming very, very soon. Check out the highway code, go onto the government website as well, and well, good luck out there. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell, like and share. Check out the website RevelatorAlf.com, and I'll catch you again. Ta-da.